To host or not to host? That is the question. Peter Buswell for Dr. VoIP, and let's take a look at this interesting question. Should you have a virtual solution or should you own it? Let's make some assumptions. A, you're a serious business user. Quality of service is absolutely paramount. We can't have telephone service that sounds like a worst cell phone conversation. We really need some high quality of service. Unified communications feature set is essential to you. You want that digital operator. You want the voicemail. You want the voicemail to email, find me, follow me, and mobility features. You might even have some call center functions, queuing callers for the next available staff member, things of that ilk. The assumption is you have multiple users. You're not a one-man operation. That you need the ability to transfer and conference with your rest of your staff regardless of where they are located. And perhaps you do have multiple locations. I'm assuming that return on investment means something to you. If the main issue here is who can sell me the cheapest dial tone on the planet, and I don't have to spend any money for equipment, then you probably have already made your decision. If you're a single user, maybe you should just run down to Radio Shack and get your favorite Magic Jack solution or Call Vonage. Other than that, I think you're probably serious about evaluating voice over IP and seeing how it applies to your business situation in either the cloud or in your place of business. And some of the criteria that I'm going to touch on here has to do with scale. Like I said, there's a certain size at which the question is relevant. There's another size at which it doesn't make any sense. I'm going to say if you're larger than 10 desktops, then this is a worthy blog for you to review. Less than 10, my thinking is it's really not going to matter much to you, although I expect to give you some criteria here and show you some information that might impact your decision. We're going to talk about the equipment required. We're going to talk about bandwidth. If all your phone calls live in the internet, you're going to need some kind of a internet connection that looks like a high-speed on-ramp. Quality of service, again, this is important. We want a telephone system that sounds as good as it can. I need to deal with resiliency and business continuity. What happens if my internet connection goes down or my telephone system goes down? Do we have any kinds of applications that we need to be concerned about? Are we integrating with some medical or dealer management application that perhaps would challenge the hosted folks? Return on investment. Somewhere around here lives Bill. Who's Bill? Bill Payer, the CFO. The guy who's got to write the checks. He's going to need to make an evaluation here about renting forever versus the return on investment for capital expended. And lastly, I'm a big fan of the hybrid model. There's more than one way, and it doesn't have to be either or. So, first thing that's important to note is that dial tone it's always been hosted. So the phone company has always lived out here, and they provided you dial tone, and they delivered it through their various switching systems around the globe to your telephone system, a key system or a PBX, or if we're talking about your house, a single phone in your house. And as you are a business, undoubtedly you have a separate internet connection from your internet service provider. It comes into not a PBX but a router and out to your computers. So what's happened over time is more and more is being delivered over the internet. Dial tone can now also be delivered over the internet. So phone companies are also interested in moving dial tone over the internet, and more of them are offering SIP trunks, and we'll talk more about that later. But at the end of the day, you're basically talking about migrating from two separate infrastructures, your telephone infrastructure and your data infrastructure, to a single solution that brings dial tone and data services in over the internet through your internet service provider, who may today also be your phone company, into a device on the customer prem that makes dial tone for the phones and data connectivity for your computers. I've given this speech so many times I'm not even going to spend more than a couple of seconds saying that if you're going to add voice to your data network, you need to make sure that you've got an excellent data network in place. A voice over IP solution is going to be about as good as the computer network it's built on. So all of this connectivity here, the cabling that's in place, the Ethernet switches, the firewall, this stuff needs to be top of the line. You cannot chintz on your expenditures here. You need quality equipment in place, and you're going to need a high-speed internet connection, a firewall, local area network switching. You may or may not have a need for wireless depending on how much mobile devices are running around your office. Today, that's getting to be a big part of the picture. So having said that a good data network means a good voice network, let's take a look at the equipment requirements. And at the end of the day, one of the most interesting aspects of this discussion is that it doesn't really matter if you're going to host or you're going to own your equipment. At the end of the day, you're going to require this stuff under either scenario. You're going to require an internet connection. Of course, if we're bringing voice in over this internet connection, it's going to become more important and be a higher speed and a wider roadway to the internet than if it was just used for serving an email. You're going to need a router. In either scenario, we're going to need a router. We're going to need a firewall to protect our inside network from the evil wild west of the internet. So the requirement here perhaps is that we have a SIP savvy firewall if we're going to put our voice in the hosted cloud. We need Ethernet switches. The Ethernet switch, even if you host, you're going to need to be able to connect your telephone handsets to the computer network. And typically, if you do not have a power over Ethernet switch, unless you want to put a wall wart under every desk that has a handset, you'll want that handset to be powered over the same cable that the data connection is completed on. So you'll be putting in Ethernet switches, and again, it doesn't matter if it's your own equipment or you're hosting it. Someone's paying for some new Ethernet switches. Obviously, you need the handsets in either scenario, whether you're getting your service in a cloud or getting it from your local telephone system on your customer prem. You're going to need a handset. You're going to need telephone lines, even if they're hosted. And I'm going to show you why I think you need some at your customer premise anyway. And then from a financial perspective, we're either going to rent this service forever or we're going to own the equipment. And here's where I think your CFO needs to take an ROI reading. So again, the topology is the same regardless if the PBX lives here on your place of business or out here in the cloud. You're going to have an Ethernet. You're going to have PoE switches to connect your computers and your telephones. You're going to have a firewall, and you're going to have a router. This is not going to change. The only thing that's going to change is, where is this box that gives me all that wonderful unified communication, my voicemail, my automated attendant, my web-based call control? Where is that going to live? Is that going to live here, or is it going to live out here at the voice provider? Is my dial tone going to come directly in from the phone company to my PBX, or is it going to be out here? And as we move our telephone system from inside to outside, there is a ramification on this internet connection. Let's talk about that a bit. Understand that if the PBX box lives at the internet service provider rather than here on your place of business, let me show you what's going to happen when Bob over here calls Sue over here. You would think that that phone call would go from here to here. The fact of the matter is, in a hosted solution, that may not be true. What's going to happen is Bob's going to set up a phone call, but first he has to go way over your internet connection through the cloud down here to the box, tell the box what he wants to do. The box has to set up another phone call over to here and ring this phone. So at the end of the day, depending on how the media actually streams, we're using twice as much bandwidth across this internet connection for Bob to call Sue than we would otherwise. Now, it is possible to put some smarts out here at the customer prem that say, if Bob calls Sue, no need to go out here, they're right next door, make that connection. Well, guess what you just described? You just described putting a box here on your customer premise. And so what was the value of putting it here? Let's put it here, limit the amount of traffic that has to flow across our internet connection, lower the bandwidth requirements. Resiliency. What happens if this connection goes down for some reason? We're dead in the water here. We can't even make phone call to phone call within our own office. Why? Because the brains are down here and this circuit is out. So that's something to think about. Additionally, do we have some applications? Are we running applications on these computers that integrate with some way to the telephone system? Now, I'm not talking Salesforce.com, although that might be an example, but many of you have medical applications, dealer management applications, other proprietary applications unique to your business that might integrate with your telephone system, and that's something that should at least be discussed with your potential hosted environment provider. At the end of the day, I'm a big proponent of the hybrid model. I'm thinking that I want the PBX to be at my place of business. Today, software-based PBXs are so low in price that you could probably put one of these in place on your prem for about the cost of a PC, and have the security of knowing that I can get voice over IP dial tone over the internet, so I'm able to drag in those DID numbers from remote locations in Europe and Latin America, as well as, foreign exchanges. If I'm in San Diego and I want a New York DID, I can get it. But at the same time, if this internet connection goes down, I still have some local individual POTS lines to the telephone company. I think that there is something to be said for the hybrid model, and I think rather than an either or, hosted or owned, we might take a look at an architecture in which we provide both.